In the heart of a bustling city, hidden down a dim alleyway, there was a small, unassuming restaurant with a flickering neon sign that read Destiny's Diner. It looked no different from the countless other eateries that lined the city streets, except for one unsettling detail. The diner was always open, no matter the time of day or night, and no one could recall it ever being closed. Those who ventured inside found a cozy, nostalgic atmosphere that seemed to call back to a simpler time. The walls were adorned with black and white photos of smiling faces, all dining happily. A jukebox in the corner played soft tunes from decades past, and the scent of home-cooked meals filled the air. The menu was extensive, featuring every comfort food imaginable, and the prices were oddly cheap. But Destiny's Diner had a secret. It was not a place for the hungry, but a trap for the unwary. For those who sat down and ate were bound by more than just the food, they were bound by the diner's true purpose, to alter their destinies forever. The first to discover this sinister truth was a man named Mark, who wandered in late one stormy night. He was an overworked lawyer, desperate for a meal after missing dinner at home. The hostess, an elderly woman with a gentle smile, seated him at a corner booth. She handed him a menu without a word, her eyes lingering on him just a moment too long. Mark ordered a simple burger and fries, nothing fancy, just something to fill his empty stomach. When the food arrived, it was better than anything he had tasted before. The flavors were perfect, as if the meal had been crafted specifically for him. Mark devoured every bite, feeling a warmth spread through him as he ate. But as he finished his meal, the warmth turned cold. A strange unease settled in his gut, but he shook it off and paid his bill, leaving a generous tip for the hostess who never stopped smiling. The next morning, Mark woke to find his world had shifted. He went through his usual routine, but everything felt slightly off. At work, cases he had been winning effortlessly turned against him, his confidence crumbled, and his once bright career began to falter. Each day was worse than the last, his marriage grew strained, his friends distanced themselves, and soon, Mark was left alone, watching his life unravel. Desperate to understand what was happening, Mark retraced his steps back to Destiny's Diner. He confronted the hostess, demanding answers. She simply smiled and said, "You ate here. You chose your path. The diner takes what it's due." Mark left in a rage, but the truth was inescapable. Destiny's Diner had rewritten his fate. And Mark was not the only one. Word began to spread about the diner among the city's residents, though it was spoken of in whispers. Some claimed the diner would bring fortune and fame, while others warned of misery and despair. The diner's pull was irresistible to those desperate for change, whether seeking to escape a bad life or find something better. A young artist named Lena visited one evening, hoping for inspiration to break her creative block. She ordered a slice of cherry pie, savoring the sweetness as she imagined her artistic dreams coming true. The next day, she was overflowing with ideas, painting masterpieces that brought her instant fame. But soon, she was trapped by the demands of success, her creativity stifled by the pressures of her new life. She realized too late that the diner's gift was a curse she couldn't escape. Some learned to avoid the diner altogether, warning others of its perils. But many couldn't resist the temptation. They would slip into Destiny's Diner late at night, drawn by the promise of something more, or something less, than their current lives. And through it all, the diner remained. The hostess continued to greet each guest with that same unsettling smile, watching as they made their choices, knowing that once they ate, their destiny would never be the same. No one knew where the diner had come from or who had created it. Some said it was a manifestation of fate itself, feeding on the desires and regrets of those who entered. Others believed it was a curse placed upon the city, a reminder that no meal was ever truly free. But one thing was certain, those who entered Destiny's Diner did so at their own peril, for the food was not just nourishment, but a transaction, one that could never be undone. And as long as the neon sign continued to flicker, the diner would remain, patiently waiting for the next soul hungry enough to gamble with their fate. Reverend Elijah Morris was a man of great renown. He led one of the largest congregations in the city, a sprawling megachurch that drew thousands every Sunday. His sermons were broadcast on television, his words reaching far beyond the walls of his church. He was known for his charisma, his unwavering faith, and his powerful messages that inspired hope and change in the lives of his followers. He was the shepherd of his flock, and they adored him. But behind the polished exterior, Reverend Morris harbored doubts and burdens that he kept hidden from everyone, even from his family. The weight of leading so many, of being the moral compass for countless souls, had begun to wear on him. His faith, once a blazing light, now flickered like a candle struggling against the wind. He prayed for guidance, for a sign, but the heavens remained silent. One evening, after a particularly draining service, Reverend Morris found himself walking aimlessly through the city. The streets were quiet, save for the occasional hum of a passing car, or the distant chatter of late-night wanderers. As he turned a corner, he saw it, the flickering neon sign of Destiny's Diner. It seemed to call to him, offering a respite from the turmoil in his mind. He hesitated at the door, but his weariness won out. He entered the diner, where the familiar scent of comfort food greeted him. The hostess, with her warm yet unsettling smile, showed him to a booth by the window. She handed him a menu, her eyes lingering on him as though she knew him, as though she knew why he was there. Reverend Morris ordered a bowl of chicken soup, hoping for something simple to ease his troubled soul. When the soup arrived, steaming and fragrant, he felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. He took a spoonful, savoring the rich flavors that seemed to reach deep inside him, soothing the weariness that clung to his bones. He ate slowly, each bite a comfort, each sip a balm for his frayed nerves. But as he finished the last spoonful, a cold dread settled in his stomach. He glanced around the diner, suddenly aware of the odd quiet, the eerie stillness that hung in the air. The hostess watched him from the counter, her smile never faltering. Feeling uneasy, Reverend Morris paid his bill and left, shaking off the sense of foreboding that followed him out the door. The next Sunday, Reverend Morris stood at the pulpit, ready to deliver his sermon. But as he spoke, the words that once flowed so easily now felt heavy and forced. The congregation sensed it too, murmurs rippled through the pews as people exchanged uneasy glances. Attendance began to dwindle. Those who once hung on his every word now found his sermons lacking the fire and conviction that had drawn them in. The church's board grew concerned. Donations declined, and soon rumors began to spread, whispers of scandals, of mismanagement, of a pastor who had lost his way. Reverends from other churches began to criticize him publicly, and the media was quick to pounce on the fallen pastor's struggles. In a matter of weeks, the once thriving megachurch that had stood as a beacon of faith and hope was on the brink of collapse. Desperate to save his church, Reverend Morris redoubled his efforts. He prayed harder, fasted longer, and sought counsel from his peers, but nothing seemed to stem the tide. It was as if a dark cloud had settled over his life, sucking the vitality from everything he touched. Even his closest allies began to. And so, the diner remained, a silent arbiter of fate, feeding on the hopes, fears, and desperate desires of those who crossed its threshold. For in Destiny's Diner, every meal was a choice, and every choice came with a price. As word of Destiny's Diner spread throughout the city, it became notorious for the strange and tragic fates of those who ate there. The diner was whispered about in schools, workplaces, and among friends. Many were too scared to go near it, but some were curious, tempted by the chance to change their lives, for better or worse. A group of young people, tired of seeing their friends and families suffer because of the diner's sinister influence, decided to take matters into their own hands. Led by a determined and fearless teenager named Maya, they believed the only way to stop the diner's curse was to destroy it. They saw the diner as a source of misery and manipulation, feeding on the vulnerabilities of people who just wanted a better life. One night, Maya and her friends gathered supplies, gasoline, rags, and lighters. They made their way to the alley where the diner stood, its neon sign flickering ominously as if taunting them. The hostess, ever vigilant, watched from the window but made no move to stop them. With a mix of fear and resolve, the youths doused the building in gasoline. As the flames began to lick the walls, the diner's calm and quiet demeanor seemed to shift, almost as if it was alive and aware of its impending doom. The hostess simply stood inside, her unsettling smile never leaving her face, even as the fire grew. As the flames roared, the diner was engulfed, its cursed walls finally succumbing to the blaze. The neon sign flickered one last time before sputtering out for good. The youths watched as the building burned to the ground, its hold on their lives seemingly broken. In the aftermath, the community felt a strange sense of relief. While the scars left by the diner remained, its physical presence, and the fear it inspired, was gone. Maya and her friends hoped they had freed their city from the diner's curse, and for the first time in a long while, they felt a glimmer of hope that the future could be shaped by their own hands, unbound by the sinister choices offered at Destiny's Diner. But as the ashes cooled, some couldn't help but wonder, had they truly destroyed the evil, or merely delayed its next meal?